Hi everyone, Jessica here from Stitching Colours and welcome back. Today is the 5th of November and I am filming the first of possibly many, what I'm calling a stitch and chat session. So I guess grab a coffee or your stitching or anything else you'd like to drink instead and settle in for a while. Today I am working on Planets Align, which is the Tilt and Craft piece, and I am trying to finish it today. I've got 238 stitches left and they are all one colour, so it'll be pretty easy. And I keep trying to film these. Unfortunately, I have a little situation with Luna in that normally within minutes of me starting to film these, she comes over wanting attention. So having the camera angled from behind me means it's really easy to get out of camera, and then trying to get in the right spot again can be a little bit difficult. So I decided to do it from this angle this time, and yeah. Hi. So I gave her some treats before turning on the camera and she seems to have ignored them. They're still sitting on the floor. She doesn't care. I was hoping it would keep her occupied for just a little bit, but apparently not quite. So it's been a busy few months, and this week has been no exception, and it's probably only going to get worse as we get closer to Christmas. It's just going to be interesting. I do have a very interesting story though. So yeah. One of the jobs I had to do this week involved headed down to Invercargill, and I met the guy on site at 4:30 on Thursday afternoon. So drove down there, did the job, and then was on my way back. So there's quite a bit of roadworks going on at the moment. Because it's spring, they always try and get a lot of roadworks done right before Christmas or right after Christmas, because best weather means there's not so many delays and things like that. And one of the big ones at the moment is the Tyree Bridge, where only one lane is currently open due to repairs and replacements that they're doing on the barriers. So originally these were concrete barriers, and there's been a few accidents and cars that have gone through them over the years, and so they're being replaced with steel barriers at the moment, and they're working on one side at a time, so only one lane is open. And then there are concrete barriers that have been installed across the centre line, I guess, to prevent traffic from going across that, and they're all bolted down. I'm guessing they're bolted down, they have to be. Anyway, so was on my way back, sitting at the lights for a few minutes. They were red on my end because they've got lights, like temporary lights set up for it, and then they went green, so started crossing the bridge. Got about nearly 3/4 of the way across when we came across another car coming from the other direction. That obviously decided to ignore the red light that they would have had on their end. So this bridge is about 500 meters long because of it's on the floodplains, so in spring it can get, in winter it can get quite high, the river, so it can go quite wide because of where the banks are. Anyway, so this other vehicle is very, very slowly backing back, not very well, taking it inch by inch, it felt like, when obviously the lights changed again because they're on a timer, and then other vehicles came up behind this other vehicle that was this little car that was slowly backing up, and so we were all at an impasse because the bridge was practically full from both ends, and one of the vehicles that had just come onto the bridge from the other direction was a big freight truck which could not back up. So there was about 20 or so vehicles from my direction that we all had to back off the bridge. Let's just say it wasn't a fun time. And I was very glad that I had a backing camera. Some of the other cars didn't, and I can't blame them for not being all that happy having to back off the bridge when we were 3/4 of the way across. So I guess at least it was a straight bridge, so that's something, but wasn't a fun time. Definitely meant that I was home about half an hour later than I had originally expected, because once we got off the bridge we then had to work out getting back onto the right cycle of the lights. Because there were so many vehicles, you had all of us that had to back off the bridge, but then there was all the other people that had come up to the bridge beforehand as well, because this weekend has been the Beer and Wine Festival, so that was started Friday. So you can imagine there was a few people travelling through after work to have a long weekend in town. So wasn't fun. We got there eventually, but I was just amazed that somebody would think that not following the lights was a good idea. Yeah, so I got home about half an hour later than planned, but all was well in the end. It was just a bit frustrating, and all the paperwork I have to fill in, I have not done so yet, but I have to fill in all the paperwork because it comes under a near miss. Just what I wanted to have to do, but that's alright. I've got some additional resourcing coming from another branch this week, so I can get them to do a few things while I deal with some other paperwork. Fun times. Yeah. So, where am I? We'll go that way instead. everyone's coming into the lead up to Christmas, and it's getting more and more chaotic as everything needs to be all tidied up before Christmas. We've got our finishing dates for our Christmas shutdown, which we'll see how things go, because we may have some other testing during the shutdown to complete. There's discussion of doing some Legionnaires testing on the cruise ships that are coming through. The problem is that season for when they are coming through starts right in that Christmas shutdown period, which for us is the 22nd of December to the 6th of January. Of course, we're still going to have someone on call in case emergency things come up, as they always do. So it's going to be interesting, like all Christmas times. But that's just the way it goes. So yeah, I'm currently just waiting on some air monitoring pumps that I put out this morning to finish doing their running and collecting of air, so then I can go collect them. They should be finished around 2 o'clock, and then I've got to grab a few samples at the same time. So it's actually a bit of a pain this weekend, because there is some removals going on in the building, and it's an asbestos paper-backed vinyl that's being removed, and because of the vinyl sitting on concrete, they had to remove it they had to grind the concrete down. But in doing so, you'll probably realize that that's not a very quiet thing to be doing. So they tried to do this during the week. Earlier on, it would have been Thursday, the 31st, Wednesday, somewhere around that. And essentially they got told within 10 minutes of starting to shut it all down, and that they would have to work out of hours or come up with another plan, which isn't possible. So they are working today, and then they are going on to work nights as of tomorrow. So that just means for us, we just have to put some monitors out and then collect them later on. The problem is with this site, it's a 7-story building, and during the removals we have to put out 2 air monitors, one at the decontamination unit and the other at the negative pressure unit, which is the fan that's responsible for air changes in the enclosure. Unfortunately, while the DCU, the decontamination unit, is really easy to access, the negative pressure unit is a real pain to get at, because you have to go inside the building up onto the 3rd floor, and then go out onto the scaffolding, walk round the building, and then go down the drop ladders for on the scaffolding down to just above the ground floor. So there are 5 ladders? 6 ladders, I think. So then you have to go, I have to put the pump out, and then have to go back up all of those ladders and back inside and down in the lift, or the stairs, depending on how I'm feeling. But after climbing all those ladders, I'm not up really in the mood to go down all the stairs as well. So that has to be done twice, once to place the monitor and then to collect it daily during removals. So it's a bit tedious, but it's just one of these things. So I know there have been some questions about what I actually do for work. So I have to be pretty careful what I say, because we do have a few governmental contracts, and as such they come with all of the confidentiality agreements and everything like that. So do you have to? Lance, you good? You alright? Oh dear. Anyway, so what I do is I'm a senior hazmat consultant. So what we do is asbestos testing and surveying and clearances, and we also do occupational hygiene testing as well. So for the asbestos side, we do sample collections and surveys to identify the asbestos containing materials in buildings and areas, and then depending on what's happening, depends on the type of survey and what the future plans are. So it could be as simple as a asbestos management survey, which starts off as a inspection of just the surface level materials, so things that are going to be disturbed during your normal daily activities, or very minor maintenance such as changing light bulbs and things like that. Then it comes under, from those management surveys, a management plan is normally created, and so that puts in place recommendations of restrictions on activities based on what was identified, and recommendations for future removals of those surface level materials. The next kind of survey is a refurbishment survey, which is a more intrusive inspection into the fabric of the building, which could be as simple as cutting a few inspection holes into wall linings to identify that there's no asbestos materials within the wall cavities. Or it could be a lot more intrusive. It all just depends on the scope of the planned renovations in the building. So based on that, we would put removals are recommended to be undertaken of any materials that are going to be disturbed during that refurbishment work. And then the last kind of survey is a demolition survey. So this is a fully intrusive survey which is completed at the end of the building's life before it's demolished, to identify all of the asbestos containing materials that still remain. So this is fully intrusive and involves putting a lot of holes in walls and things. So it can be quite physically demanding, that side of it. Then from that, generally, if the more so on the more so on the refurbishment and demolition side, if materials are identified, then they need to be removed before the refurbishments go ahead. So during these, depending on the type of material, different control measures are put in place. So there are two different types of removals: non-friable and friable removals. So non-friable removals are things that are less likely to release fibres when airborne, so, or broken up. So things like fibre cements and other similar products. Other materials are considered friable because of the way that they're applied, or the amount of asbestos in them, and the likelihood that there will be airborne asbestos from that removal. So based on that, different controls are put in place. The friable stuff is when you'll see big enclosures being put up around an area using plastic, and then they will do all the removals, and then another company like us will be brought in to do the clearance inspections. So these can be different depending on the situation and the type of removals, but for a friable removal we do a 4-stage clearance, which involves inspections of their paperwork, and then inspections of the area, and then followed by air testing and surface testing. And if that passes, the removal company will remove the enclosure, and then following that we will complete another inspection to indicate or make sure that everything has all been removed and that they have left the site in a good and safe condition, at which point we issue a reoccupation certificate. So for a non-friable removal, it's slightly different in that the inspections are only the visual side. There's not necessarily a clearance air sample or surface validation completed. The difference also with the friable versus non-friable removals is that as part of the enclosure, additional controls are put in place because they've got a negative pressure unit, or the fan that they're using to control air changes that's got heaps of filters internally, and also the decontamination unit. So we run air monitoring during the removals to ensure that the surrounding areas are safe for people to be in. So it makes things interesting. Also with friable removals in New Zealand, you are required to have a asbestos assessor's license if you're completing any clearances or any work associated with clearances and of friable materials. So that is a license that is issued by WorkSafe based on evidence that you provide. So it makes things a little bit interesting, but ensures that standards are being kept. Another aspect that I take care of myself personally is that I am our technical manager for methamphetamine testing. So this is a relatively recent role that I stepped into in May this year, when our previous technical manager moved on to another job, and essentially company-wide there were 2 of us left as the signatories for reporting, and that meant that either one of us had to take over as the technical manager. The other person that is on a casual contract because he's pretty close to retiring. So we work together and get all the reports reviewed and all that, but I am currently fielding quite a few phone calls and have some travel coming up for some training I need to do out in our other branches. So that's going to be fun. But there's a lot of things I need to get done in regards to that, but it's just finding the time. So other testing that we do is mold testing and lead paint testing, respirable crystalline silica testing, noise, vibration, the other ones I can think of off the top of my head. So we do quite a variety of things. Oh, VOC testing, we've got some of that coming up shortly, which will be interesting. But yeah, it means doing a lot of different things. No day is ever quite the same. I tend to more be on the side of doing the asbestos stuff and the lead paint and methamphetamine testing. For the methamphetamine testing, in case anyone's interested, there are 3 different types of tests. You've got your baseline, which will give an overall idea of whether a property is contaminated with methamphetamine or not. And then you've got your detailed assessment, which will give you the quantity and magnitude of a contamination that's present. So this is done by doing a sample every 10 square meters in a room, and it's done every room throughout the property. Then there is post-decontamination assessments, which are completed after decontamination for a property that has been contaminated. So to do that, we retest the surfaces and other surfaces that have been previously tested, and we can identify the levels present. So depending on the results from that post-decontamination assessment, there can be further decontamination work required, or the property can be ready to occupy again. It all just depends on the materials used in the house. Something we've found is that varnished surfaces are really hard to get that contamination out. As much as improvements are being made with the chemicals and things for decontamination, it doesn't seem to make any difference. It's always the varnished surfaces. So we can have, I think I've seen a PDA 6 recently. So that was post decontamination 6. So you start with a post decontamination 1 or PDA 1, So that's following the first set of decontamination, and this one was up to a PDA 6. So that kind of tells you what it wasn't a great place. Mainly it was because of varnished surfaces. So in the end, those varnished surfaces were completely stripped back and removed. So part of the reinstatement will be putting in some new doors and frames and things. Just one of those situations. So yeah. I know there have been a couple of questions about Luna, my cat, and my mum's cat Coco. She goes by Stitching Addicted here on YouTube. They are the same breed, but they are different colours and they came from different breeders. So they're both ragdolls. Luna is a couple of years older than Coco, and she is a blue colour point, which means she tends towards the grey tones for her ears, paws, tail and face. So that is in relation to temperature differentials with their extremities. So they're all born they're all born as white, pure white kittens, and then over time they get their full colours, and once they're about 5 years old they have their full colouring. So Luna being a blue colour point means that she goes towards the grey direction and on those extremities, and she is pretty cream coloured on the rest of her coat. I know I've seen situations where people have had their cats shaved in areas and their coat comes back darker because it's in relation to the temperature change. So that's quite cool. Coco, on the other hand, is a chocolate bicolour. So very similar but different markings the way it is, and the chocolate is a light brown, so this is a diluted form of the seal colours. I'm not quite sure how the colouring works for that quite the same. Never something I've really thought about, but yeah. So I bought the thread drops for these off Amazon when I first started this piece quite some time ago, and I've found myself very disappointed with them. So these are acrylic thread drops. I'm not sure how you can see, but they did actually have a top to them at the start, and over time I've been working on this piece a year and a half, and all of them pretty much have broken off at this top point, so it must be a bit of a weak point. I was quite disappointed, and they're not something I will look at again. I've definitely found that the 3D printed thread drops seem a lot more sturdy, and yeah, so given the price of them I was very disappointed by these, and I am glad that I don't have too many more of them. They were just quite a disappointment. So, can't win everything, but I guess it's a learning curve and something I will know for the future. I've been debating about how to discuss this one thing about Bella Filipina, but I figure I'll just come out and say it. I'm disappointed. So I'm working on the Mermaids of the Seasons stitch along that they're working on with Bella, with Fiberlicious. I think Fiberlicious dyed the fabric ideal fabrics and things. Anyway, I'm disappointed with their charting. The piece itself in the end is beautiful. I'm not saying that that is a problem, but I'm really disappointed with their symbol selection, and it seems to be a issue throughout all of the Bella Filipina pieces. I'm sure they'll say, oh, it's because we've got so many symbols, but that doesn't account for it. You've got Heaven and Earth Designs, Gecko Rouge, and everyone else who does full coverage patterns that have far more different symbols and things than what Bella Filipina need to use for their pieces, and there seems to be far too many very, very similar symbols on their keys. It means that several times when stitching them, I have definitely double checked on this mermaid, especially this second one. So there's a few symbols that are quite similar. And why these designers insist on using these arrows that are essentially the same symbol but just a different direction, it's frustrating. But the number of symbols in these Bella Filipinas that are so similar, I find it very disappointing, and especially their reaction to people's comments about the symbols. I'm aware this isn't the first time this has come up, and I was expecting that they would have sorted this issue, especially given that this is a pattern being released digitally, so changes can be made right up to the last minute when they were releasing the patterns and the keys and everything like that, and they haven't done that. So it kind of feels to me that they don't care about their end users, the people buying their patterns, which they should, because these are their clients, their customers. It just doesn't ring well for me. And as such, I have decided that while I will finish this mermaid stitch along, and I will finish, or I will stitch the 3 that I have bought and got kitted up already of theirs, which is the Mayari, Hanan and Tala, I won't be buying any more Bella Filipina patterns. That is my personal opinion and my personal choice, so feel free to go ahead and buy them yourselves, but I honestly am disappointed in them. It's not been the first time that it has been brought up about symbols being extremely similar, as in almost identical symbols in their patterns, and the fact that they haven't fixed this for patterns going forward, it just doesn't feel like they care about the product that they are releasing. And I've as such made the decision to, no, I'm not going to accept that. There are plenty more designers out in the world that I can go and stitch on their pieces instead. And as such, I'm going to go down that pathway. I refuse to accept that just because they don't want to put in a few minutes extra looking at their charts and their symbols, that and checking for any identical or very similar or even anywhere near similar symbols, that I should have to put in the extra time and work to ensure that I'm getting the correct colours. It just doesn't seem right, and as such I have decided that there are plenty more designers out there, and yeah, the only reason I will stitch the Mayari, Hanan and Tala is because I have got them all kitted up with all of their beads, specialty threads and everything, and the fabric that I'm going to stitch it on. So one of those things, but there are other designers out there and it's time to explore some of those other options. It's going to be fun. So the other thing I've seen, Highlands, coming up as a bit of a debate, and it seems to be more and more prevalent through the community, is the use of AI art. Highlands. And it's something I've also been very disappointed with pattern creators and those releasing patterns recently, because of the lack of clarity and confirmation over whether pieces are AI art or not. And that's also something I don't agree with. I think that if you want to buy a piece, a pattern that's based on an AI art, go for it. That's your own personal choice. But you should have the choice of whether you're buying a piece that's based on AI art or based on a digital art or a painting that somebody's done. You shouldn't be forced to do research into every single artist before buying a piece, or find out when you're in the middle of stitching it that it is AI art. I feel like we should have a choice of whether we want to participate in this artwork. I mean, it is awesome that people that may not have the years and years of experience and things can join the art world. However, there needs to be some form of declaration over whether this is AI art or whether it is somebody's artwork. And prices should not be the same. I'm seeing AI art that's being charged at exactly the same price as something that somebody has spent hundreds of hours creating. And I understand that there are costs involved in AI art, but it doesn't feel right that that these artworks are being forced upon people who may not realize that AI art. I know I've got a couple that I have realized, yeah, they're AI art, but one of them I really, really want to stitch. It feels to me like a true representation and reminder of what COVID was, and as such I have decided that I will go ahead and stitch it. But I have made it part of my choices and decisions that going forward I'm going to do a lot more investigation into pieces before purchasing and ensuring that they are not AI art. I would prefer not to stitch something that is based on artworks that have been other artworks that have been created and have had all the attention put on them for an image that takes a few minutes to generate. It just doesn't seem fair or right, and that's a choice I've made, that I don't want to put that on my wall, other than the one that I have that I really want to stitch, which may not end up on my wall anyway, because while I want to stitch something to represent COVID and the years and things that people had difficulties with, I'm not sure I want to actually put it on my wall, at least not right now. It seems too close, too soon. So we'll see how it goes. I need to stress that, again, this is my own personal opinion. If you don't have any issues with AI artwork, go for it. But I know that I'm aware of the amount of hours that are put into other artwork, and it just doesn't seem fair that using AI artwork you can generate things in such a short amount of time and still be able to charge that same price point. It just doesn't seem right, and I mean, some of these AI artworks that I've seen that people were selling, they're actually selling them at a higher price than what an actual art piece is being sold for as a cross-stitch pattern. And unfortunately, more and more pieces I'm seeing are AI art, and while I realise that the legal implications and everything like that are eventually going to catch up, I'm not sure how many more patterns I'm going to buy in the short term until that is all sorted and worked things out. Things are moving very slowly legally for that point, and yet technology moves so fast. So it's a difficult thing to take a stance on, especially given the lack of clarity and confirmation over whether pieces are AI art or not. But it's a decision I'm making that I don't want to be part of it. And because of that, I guess I will just have to be very, very careful and try to only buy artworks that aren't AI art, which going forward, looking at the images that I've seen and patterns that I've seen released recently, is not going to be that easy. It's getting really, really difficult to tell as AI art evolves and advances, and it's also very difficult to tell whether images have originally started as AI art and then been adjusted and edited using digital editing programs to allow for that to be all sorted. So it's going to be tough to make that distinction, and it's going to, well, I should say it is difficult to make that distinction over whether it is AI art at the moment, and it is only going to get worse as time goes on. Got Luna lying here, just sleeping next to me, quite happily. Well, she's not quite sleeping yet. She's having a bath. So I hate to imagine how much my chair is shaking. But I have some exciting news. I have done all 238 stitches. So, here we go. Oh, hang on. I've got to finish. I'll probably put in a picture. Just trying to get it in camera, but that is very exciting. So my next finish I will be focusing on will be the Mythical Creatures Stitch Along. That was the 2020 Stitch Along from Pain Free Crafts, and I started it in 2021, and I have gotten up to V. So V, W, X, Y, and Z are all the letters I have left. So there's 5 of them. I did U yesterday for unicorn. And then I will be finished that for the piece. And it's very exciting. And I can't wait to see what happens next year. I have to start making some plans what am I actually going to work on? What am I going to finish or try and finish? And goals. It's a big decision to be making, but as we come in closer to the end of the year, it is time to make those choices, and try and work out what I can actually achieve next year. So something you may have already heard is that Stitching Addicted and I are going to start a piece or a mini on the 1st of December. So if anyone wants to join us in that. So I've decided I'm going to start the mini Sunflower Cottage, and she's changed her mind from wanting to start that one as well to starting the mini Bear River, I think, mini something like that. You would have seen on her video. I just can't see it. So it's one of those things. Oh. Luna is awake now and ready to play. So I guess I will leave you all to it. If anyone wants to start a mini on the 1st of December, I'll be very curious to see what you start. It's something I was thinking about because Christmas time and the seasons can get quite busy and chaotic, and a mini is something that is a lot easier to pick up and put down with getting a bit more achieved. Even though you don't have to do many stitches, it feels like you're actually getting somewhere, because you might only do 800 stitches and you could have 8% done, rather than 4,000 or 5,000 for a regular Heaven and Earth designs. So I guess when I say mini, I mean kind of anything under the 100,000 stitches, and that means that even if you do pick it up for 30 minutes once a week, you're still going to feel like you're getting something and you're going to get somewhere on it. So I'll be intrigued to see if anyone else wants to join us, but in the meantime, I hope you all have a good week, and I will see you next weekend for my update, in which I will probably show this planets align again, and you'll see some of the other progress that I have made. Anyway, I hope you have a good day and that the weather is lovely for you. Alright, bye!